My name is Grayson Wells, and I fix things. Roofs, gutters, cracked siding, the kind of stuff most people don't notice until water's seeping into the living room or the wind's whistling through a hole in the attic. I own Wells Exterior, a small but reliable home repair company in Charleston. Nothing fancy. No corporate banners or shiny commercials. Just a beat-up Ford with my logo on the side, a crew of 6 good men and women, and a reputation that lets me sleep at night. What most people don't realize is that this dirty job paid for more than just the shingles on my clients' houses. It paid for the bricks of the home Camille and I live in. It funded her culinary degree, the one she chased with fire in her eyes and calluses on her fingers. It bankrolled her skincare business, Camille's Skin Studio, the one with eucalyptus-scented candles and cream-colored walls. My work, the sweat under my fingernails and the grit in my boots, made that all possible. So, call me naive, but I thought on my birthday, I'd be met with something. A little warmth. A nod of recognition. Hell, even a slice of store-bought cake would have done. Instead, when I asked Camille if the family was coming over for the small dinner I'd planned, nothing wild, just pot roast and my mom's apple pie, she didn't even lift her eyes from her phone. She just rolled them. Your brother Jared is hosting a barbecue that day, she said, like I hadn't already heard. And let's be real, your birthdays are always a bit dramatic. My sister-in-law Lila, who was lounging on our couch like it was her own, laughed loud enough to make sure I heard. Oh yeah, remember last year? The grill caught fire. That was wild. I forced a smile. That was because Jared forgot to take the plastic off the brisket. Camille shrugged. Still counts. I turned to my mom, who was fiddling with her rings at the kitchen island. So, you coming? She winced, the way she always does when guilt creeps in. We'll drop by after the barbecue if there's time. You know how Jared gets when he plans these things. Wants the whole family there. My wife smirked as she sipped from her herbal tea. A birthday for a guy who fixes gutters? Please. She didn't even mean it as a joke. That was just Camille now, sharp, polished, half sighing through life like everything was beneath her. I stared at her for a moment, wondering how we got here. Once upon a time, she used to meet me at the door with kisses and news of her latest recipe. Now, she barely noticed when I came home. I nodded slowly, let it settle. Then I said it, soft but certain, cool. Don't say I didn't warn you. She blinked like she hadn't heard me right, but I didn't repeat myself. I walked outside, the evening air thick with Charleston humidity, and leaned against the truck that had carried ladders, tools, and my dreams across the Lowcountry for years. I wasn't hurt, not in the way they probably thought I should be. No, I'd stopped expecting applause a long time ago. But that didn't mean I didn't notice the silence. Didn't mean it didn't matter. There's a difference between needing recognition and deserving it. And that night, as I looked out over my neighborhood, the fences I'd repaired, the windows I'd sealed, the homes I'd protected from hurricanes and neglect, I knew something was shifting inside me. They all thought I was just the gutter guy, a man with a toolkit and calloused hands. But they didn't know the plans I had, the calls I'd made, the foundation I was about to lay, not just under a roof, but under an idea, a movement. My birthday wasn't going to be about cake or pity or last-minute guests. It was going to be about legacy. Let them laugh. Let them eat ribs and pose for pictures at Jared's place. Because when the lights came on and the curtains lifted, they'd finally see me, not the man in dirty boots, but the builder behind something far bigger than any of them imagined. And when they did, they'd remember this birthday for the rest of their lives. As a kid, I used to stare out my bedroom window and imagine the crowd. Not a stadium crowd, no. I wasn't a ball player or a singer. Just a group of people who saw me. Who really saw me. Teachers would pass over me in school, family would gloss over the small victories, and somehow, I got used to clapping for myself in silence. That's probably why I started building. You can't ignore a roof once it's finished. You can't deny a leak that's been sealed. Physical proof, that's what I learned to rely on. Not applause. And still, deep down, that old ache stuck around. Every time Jared got praised for changing marketing jobs, again, or my mom gushed about how Lila managed the PDA bake sale like it was a Fortune 500 project, I'd feel it. The invisibility. No one asked how I built Wells Exterior from nothing. Not even Camille. To her, I was just handy around the house. I heard her say that once, giggling with a friend in our kitchen. Grayson's great for DIY stuff, she said. Like I was some YouTube handyman who dabbled in repairs on the weekends, not someone who ran a 6-figure business with 3 trucks and a book of clients that stretched from Mount Pleasant to Goose Creek. But this time, this year, I was doing something different. A few months ago, I got a call from a man named Royce, Edmund Royce, to be exact. Old money, Charleston royalty, the kind of man who wore loafers with no socks and didn't own a single social media account. He'd seen my work after one of his properties got thrashed in a storm. I rebuilt the back patio, reinforced the siding, and helped his groundskeeper secure a temporary shelter. No fanfare. Just work. Good work. And that apparently meant something to him. "I like your ethic," he'd said, swirling a glass of something aged and golden. "You build. You don't talk much. I respect that. Ever think about teaching it?" I paused. "Teaching it?" He leaned forward, that old money gleam in his eye. "This city's full of kids with nothing to do and no one willing to train them. You've got something they can use. We fund a nonprofit. You run it." I should have said no. I had enough on my plate: clients, payroll, managing Camille's growing resentment every time I got home late smelling like shingles and sealant. But instead, I said yes. Quietly, without announcing it on Facebook or sending out a family group text. I started planning. The nonprofit would be called Trade Future Foundation. We'd take teens fresh out of high school, or hell, even ones who never made it to graduation, and teach them real trade skills. Roofing, siding, basic carpentry, electrical prep. And not just technical stuff. We'd build character. Give them structure. Direction. I didn't tell Camille. Not at first. Every time I started to, she'd be mid-rant about her inventory delays or how someone copied her branding. And when she wasn't ranting, she was checked out, staring at her phone, scrolling, nodding absently like I was background noise. So I stopped trying. I figured she'd find out soon enough. The official launch was set for my birthday. The same day Jared was hosting his infamous backyard barbecue, complete with beer pong and a smoked brisket that everyone pretended to like more than they actually did. It was almost poetic. One brother hosting a meat-fueled carnival, the other unveiling something that could change lives. And nobody knew which mattered more. Not yet. I secured the Foundry hall, worked with Royce's team to set up media coverage, pulled in a few city council members who owed me favors from past repair jobs, and invited clients I'd helped over the years. Especially the ones who'd suffered during hurricane season and had nowhere to turn until I showed up with my crew and a ladder. Every night after work, I planned. Not just the event, but the future. I built training modules. I sourced affordable tools. I worked with a designer on a logo. I even made room in my schedule to mentor our first batch of students myself. And I told no one. Let them think I was sitting in my workshop sulking about missed birthday calls. Let them mock the guy who just fixes gutters. That silence? It was fuel. Every eye roll, every condescending chuckle, it only added weight to the foundation I was laying. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. I didn't want to humiliate them. I just wanted to show them what they'd never bothered to look at. Because this time, when I built something real, something lasting, it wouldn't be for Camille, or Jared, or even my mother's late-to-the-party validation. It would be for me. And this time, it wouldn't be ignored. The thing about people underestimating you is, they get comfortable doing it. It becomes muscle memory, an automatic reflex. You speak, they smirk. You plan, they dismiss. You try, and they remind you, gently or not, that your reach is only as long as your hammer handle. That week leading up to my birthday, Camille didn't just ignore my dinner plans, she actively lobbied against them like she was trying to tank a city council vote. "I'm going to Jared's," she said casually one night as she exfoliated her face in the bathroom mirror. "Everyone's going to be there. Why should I miss the fun for meatloaf and paper plates?" I didn't even look up from where I was scrubbing my boots. "I thought we said we'd keep it low-key this year." She scoffed. "Low-key doesn't have to mean sad, Grayson." That one stuck with me. Sad. Like spending an evening with your husband who paid for your dreams and built your life brick by brick was a burden. An embarrassment. Something to be pitted. 2 days before my birthday, I got a selfie from Jared. He was standing in front of a brand new grill, the kind that had Bluetooth thermometers and 7 heat zones, like he was about to grill steaks for the queen. "Sorry, man," the caption read. "Next year. Next year." Like I had birthdays to spare. Even my dad texted a day early. No call, just a bland message that read, "Happy early birthday. You know your brother's events bring the whole crew together." Yeah, I knew. I nodded at every excuse. Played the fool. Smiled at Camille when she brushed off my invitations. Told her it was fine when she asked if she should bring a bottle of wine to Jared's. She didn't know I'd already dropped a non-refundable deposit on the Foundry. Didn't know I was meeting with city officials on my lunch breaks. Didn't know I was building something behind the curtain, And when that curtain lifted, there wouldn't be any turning away. Behind the scenes, I was coordinating with press outlets, some local, a few regional. One paper had a lifestyle editor who once interviewed me during hurricane season, after I'd rebuilt half a neighborhood in less than a month. She remembered, said she'd be there. I reached out to clients, people I'd worked for when their lives were falling apart. Families who'd watched their homes cave in and trusted me to put it back together. I didn't ask them to come for me. I asked them to come for what we were doing. For the kids we were going to train. For the neighborhoods we were going to strengthen. This wasn't just a party. This was a tribute. It was every hour I spent under a summer sun with sweat stinging my eyes. Every winter morning spent on a frozen roof. Every dollar I saved when I wanted to spend. Every time someone looked at me and only saw dirt on my jeans and not the empire I built with my hands. They didn't think I'd do anything special. I was just the guy who could fix the downspout, patch the shingles, haul a ladder. A reliable presence, never the main event. But I didn't need fireworks or confetti. I needed light. And I was about to step into it. Every detail of the launch was planned to reflect the people we were trying to uplift. The logo of Trade Future Foundation was shaped like a rising sun made of tools. The decorations at the Foundry would include centerpieces made from reclaimed wood, toolboxes painted gold, and framed letters from our first apprentices. Our staff would wear name tags that didn't list titles, just first names and what they used to be before the trade turned their lives around. Ex-janitor, now electrician. Former dropout, now crew chief. Truth in ink. I kept working my day job like nothing had changed. During the day, I was still Grayson, the guy patching a roof in West Ashley or replacing siding in North Charleston. But at night, I was sculpting something bigger. They all thought I was sulking about a missed party. Let them. Camille kept flashing her RSVP to Jared's barbecue like it was a backstage pass to Coachella. She even tried on 3 different sundresses the night before, asking me which one felt more fun. I said, whichever one makes it easier for you to pretend I'm not doing anything worth showing up for. She paused, but only for a second. Don't be dramatic, Grayson. It's just a barbecue. Just a barbecue. Just a gutter guy. Just a meatloaf dinner on a paper plate. Cool. Let them laugh. I had other plans. The night had finally arrived. I stood just outside the Foundry hall, straightening the cuffs of my jacket, the one Camille had never seen. Royal blue with subtle checkered stitching, fitted like I belonged in it, like I'd planned this moment with the same precision I brought to every rooftop project. My boots were polished, but still workman's leather. I wanted them to remember who I was, who I'd always been. The Foundry stood tall in the heart of downtown Charleston, all brick and restored steel. No neon signs. No grand banners. Just soft golden lights lining the stone steps and velvet ropes swaying in the breeze. The venue usually hosted high-end art shows, elite weddings, and black tie galas. Tonight, it hosted a different kind of celebration, a foundation born not from money, but from sweat, from calloused hands, from grit that didn't wash off. Inside, it was everything I'd envisioned. My staff had transformed the space into a tribute to the trades. Reclaimed with tables held centerpieces made from old copper piping bent into elegant shapes, each filled with wildflowers. Toolboxes, worn, dented, and dusted clean, served as decoration and symbol. Lanterns dangled from the rafters, casting soft light over plaques with words like resilience, craft, and legacy. My apprentices, kids I'd mentored, kids who once thought they had no future beyond minimum wage or jail time, were dressed to the nines. One wore a dark green suit with a patch on the inside that read, "First one in the family to wear a tie." Another, a young woman with braids pulled into a crown, greeted guests like a seasoned hostess. She'd helped rebuild 3 houses last year after the storm. That night, she was the queen of the room. I moved through the space, shaking hands with familiar faces. Clients whose homes I'd saved from rot and ruin. City council members who'd once ignored my emails but now smiled wide. Local business leaders. A chef I recognized from Camille's world, apparently curious about our training kitchen initiative. But at 7 p.m., I glanced toward the front table. Empty. 6 seats, neatly arranged. 1 for Camille, 1 each for my parents, Jared and Lila. And the 6th? I left that for dignity. For whoever else decided I mattered enough to show up. I nodded at the absence. Expected it, really. The venue buzzed with energy. A string quartet played a smooth jazz rendition of Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Glasses clinked. Laughter bloomed like firecrackers. And yet, part of me kept checking the clock. Not out of hope, but out of habit. You spend enough of your life waiting for people to see you, it becomes muscle memory. The foundation launch was scheduled for 7:30. Press would be arriving at 7:15. I had 15 minutes left of quiet, of stillness before the cameras rolled and the lights dimmed. I walked over to the bar and poured myself a small glass of bourbon. Neat. No ice. Just warmth. The kind of drink that reminded you of what you'd survived. As I sipped, a woman tapped my shoulder. Councilwoman Davis. She leaned in with a knowing smile. I had no idea you were planning something this powerful, Grayson. Most people didn't, I said. Well, it's not just a foundation. It's a movement. I nodded, thankful, but the words rolled over me like water on wax. I didn't build this for recognition. I built it because I couldn't bear to watch more kids be told they weren't good enough just because they didn't want a desk job. Because I remembered what it felt like to be overlooked in your own house. I walked the perimeter of the room, touching the wood grain of tables, checking the name tags one last time, making sure my apprentices felt proud, secure, grounded. They did. I could see it in the way they stood taller, laughed freer, looked people in the eye like they belonged. But the front table stayed empty. At 7:10, the photographer walked in, gear slung across his shoulder. At 7:12, the mayor's assistant arrived with a folder full of endorsements. At 7:14, I heard the click-click-click of high heels on stone. I didn't turn around. Not yet. Because as much as I wanted my family to be there, especially Camille, I realized something standing in that glowing, repurposed steel cathedral. I wasn't empty. The seats were. But I wasn't. I was full. Of fire. Of peace. Of purpose. Because while they grilled hot dogs and clinked solo cups in Jared's backyard, I built something real. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need them to clap for it. I was already standing in the applause. At 7:15 on the dot, I heard the commotion start at the entrance. First, it was the sound of hurried footsteps on the stone outside. Then came the unmistakable rhythm of confusion. Doors opening too fast, velvet ropes shuffled aside, voices raised in apology and curiosity. The photographers had arrived, right on schedule, lenses already lifted, flashes warming up. I adjusted my cuffs and stepped toward the stage as a fresh wave of guests trickled in, buzzing from the press release that had just gone live. Grayson Wells launches Trade Future Foundation, honoring the trades that built Charleston. It hit the local wire, then the regional. By the time I reached the base of the stage, I could see a ripple moving through the room, phones vibrating in pockets, glances exchanged, whispers passed like lit matches. And that's when I saw them. It said something about a foundation, she whispered. I still scanning. I thought it was just a little thing. And then came Jared, still in his barbecue shirt, smelling like charcoal and beer, sweat clinging to his temple. He looked around, wide-eyed, like he'd walked into the wrong audition. But Camille, she made the entrance. The double doors opened like a queue, and in walked my wife, heels clicking like a metronome, hips swaying with that polished confidence she wore like perfume. Her red dress was striking too formal for a backyard, just bold enough for a gala. Her makeup was flawless, lips crimson, eyes lined sharp. But the expression on her face? That was all confusion. She took 3 steps inside, then stopped. The music played softly behind her. Conversations hummed around her. But Camille? She stood frozen. What is this? She muttered. A photographer, young, eager, and assuming, stepped toward her, mistaking her poise for authority. Ma'am, are you with Mr. Wells' PR team? Could you tell us how long he's been planning this? Camille blinked, caught between disbelief and pride and something close to embarrassment. This is his event? The photographer nodded, already lifting his camera. Yes, ma'am. Can I get a photo of you with the founder? Camille didn't answer. She was still trying to catch up. I watched the entire scene from near the stage, standing behind a cluster of guests who were congratulating one another like they'd just attended a historic unveiling. None of them noticed the people just arriving were family. None of them knew that the woman in red had once laughed at the very idea of this night being anything more than dramatic. I walked over slowly, drink still in hand, and stood just behind Camille's left shoulder. Good turnout, I said. She jumped slightly, then turned to face me. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Just air. You look nice, I added. Wasn't sure red was for backyard barbecues. She blinked. Grayson, what is this? Why didn't you tell me? You didn't ask, I said calmly. But it's your birthday. It is. I looked around at the room that pulsed with intention, faces lit with inspiration, stories stitched together by effort, not ego. And it's also the beginning of something bigger. My mom walked up, clutching her pearls like they were a lifeline. Grayson, honey, Why didn't you mention any of this? Because you already had plans, I said. Didn't want to interrupt. Lila tried to offer a compliment. This place is nice. Like, really fancy. I turned to Jared, who looked like he'd stepped out of a frat party. Barbecue go well? He shrugged. Yeah, man. But this is something else. Yeah, I said. It is. Camille still hadn't moved. She stared past me, taking in the suits, the media badges, the elegant tool-themed decor. Her eyes landed on the projection screen where my face appeared, me on rooftops, mentoring kids, shaking hands with city leaders. You planned this for months, she said. I did. And you didn't say a word. I met her gaze, steady. Would you have listened? She had no answer. And the silence that followed? That was my answer. The room dimmed as the spotlight swiveled toward the stage, and suddenly, the soft hum of conversation gave way to silence. People shifted in their chairs. Forks paused midair. All eyes turned to the front, to the large screen that flickered to life above the podium. I stood just off to the side, heart steady, hands calm. I had climbed roofs in lightning storms and torn off old siding with ice clinging to my gloves. I wasn't nervous. Not now. This was my kind of work. Practical, purposeful, visible. And I was finally standing in the frame of something no one else could take credit for. The video started. It opened with a drone shot of Charleston rooftops, some pristine, others battered, tarps flapping in the wind. Then it cut to me, standing on a ladder, drill in hand, kneeling beside a busted foundation, teaching a teenager how to measure siding. One by one, the moments I thought would always live in obscurity came to life under the glow of the spotlight. Camille was still near the back, frozen in place. My parents had taken their seats awkwardly near the buffet, too far to pretend they belonged in the front row. Jared stood behind them, scratching the back of his neck like he wanted to disappear. But the rest of the room? They were leaning in. And then came the testimonials. An elderly woman in a worn cardigan appeared on screen, smiling softly. After the storm, Grayson didn't just fix my roof. He helped me carry groceries, brought bottled water, didn't charge me a dime. A single mother, holding her toddler, looked straight into the camera. He rebuilt the back steps so my son could walk down safely. He said it wasn't a big deal, but it was to me. A young man, maybe 17, with paint-stained jeans and a nervous grin said, I was flunking out of school. Nobody thought I'd make it. Grayson gave me a chance on his crew. Now I'm teaching others. I saw Camille shift uncomfortably. I didn't look away. The screen faded to black. Applause rose slowly, then built like thunder rolling through old steel beams. I stepped forward, toward the mic, into the spotlight that felt warmer than any sunroof I'd ever stood beneath. I looked out at the crowd. Not just the investors or the politicians, but the builders. The kids in suits, the neighbors who'd once cried in my driveway, the ones who remembered me not for what I said, but for what I did. I took a breath and leaned into the mic. Some people said my birthday dinner wasn't worth attending, I began. A few people chuckled nervously. I let it hang there. Said it was embarrassing to throw a party for a guy who fixes gutters. A ripple of laughter rolled through the audience, not cruel, but surprised. Warm. Engaged. I nodded. But fixing things is what I do. I stepped to the edge of the stage, voice steady, heart wide open. I fix leaks. I patch walls. I rebuild what time and weather try to tear down. But tonight, I'm fixing something bigger. Not just roofs. Not just windows. I'm fixing futures. There was a stillness then. A reverence. I glanced at Camille. She was staring at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of the mic. Like I'd slipped through the cracks of her expectations and rebuilt myself while she wasn't looking. I started this business with one ladder, one truck, and a willingness to show up when others didn't. And tonight, I'm launching Trade Future Foundation, not to be celebrated, but to give back. Because young people deserve to know that working with your hands doesn't make you less. I looked down at my calloused palms. It makes you more. Applause erupted again, stronger this time. Some stood. Some whistled. Some just sat with tears quietly slipping down their cheeks. I ended with one last line. You don't have to wear a suit to build something that lasts. Sometimes, all it takes is showing up, ready to work. And with that, I stepped back. The music picked up again. The lights lifted. The spotlight dimmed, but I didn't feel any smaller. I didn't shrink back into the shadows. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to wait for someone else to introduce me, to validate me, to call me anything more than what I already was. Builder, founder, fixer, leader, Grayson Wells. And whether or not my family saw it then, the rest of the room, they saw it loud and clear. The moment I stepped down from the stage, the room erupted. Not into chaos, but into warmth. People stood. Not everyone, but enough. Their applause didn't feel hollow or polite. It felt earned. Real. Some clapped hard like they knew exactly what this moment cost. Others just nodded slowly, hands tucked respectfully at their sides, like they'd seen something they hadn't expected and were still catching their breath. I moved through the crowd in a kind of daze, not the kind that comes from confusion, but from clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking myself to fit someone else's idea of who I was supposed to be. I didn't have to minimize my work or downplay my pride. This night had my name on it. Not just the invitation, but the spirit of it. My fingerprints were on every inch of this foundation, and now the world knew it. I shook hands, hugged a few shoulders. My investors came first, led by Mr. Royce in his signature tailored linen suit. He clapped me on the back like a proud uncle. "You've got something special here, Grayson," he said. "This isn't a foundation, it's a revolution. You lit the match tonight. Let it burn." "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with more emotion than I expected. "Thank you for trusting me." The mayor came next. He offered a photo, a handshake, and then whispered something about a grant proposal that he'd like to expedite. It all felt surreal, but also deserved. Still, as the glow of the public moment began to fade, I saw them. By the buffet table, just outside the center of the crowd, stood the people I had once assumed would be at the front of the room. My family. Camille was the first to move. Her heels clicked slowly against the concrete floor, her face softer now, mascara slightly smudged at the edges. She stopped just short of me, like there was a wall between us she wasn't sure she was allowed to cross. "Grayson," she said, voice quiet, breath trembling. "I didn't know." I tilted my head. "No," I said gently. "You didn't want to know." She swallowed hard. "I thought you were just throwing together a dinner." I said, but I was also building something important. She looked around the room, taking in the lingering guests, the banners, the glowing faces of young men and women whose futures had just cracked open. I don't have words." "You don't need words," I replied. "You just needed to show up." Before she could respond, my mother stepped in, arms already stretching toward me. She hugged me tightly, tighter than I expected, and whispered in my ear. "I'm sorry, baby," she said. "I didn't know this meant so much to you." I let her hold me for a moment, then pulled back. It's meant everything to me. For years. My father came next, hands in his pockets, mouth pulled in that uneasy smirk he wore when emotions got too close. "You got us," he said, half laughing. "Didn't think you were planning all this." "That's kind of the problem, Dad," I said. "You didn't think." He nodded. "You're right." Then Jared stepped forward, barbecue sauce still faint on his collar, sweat long since dried. He looked embarrassed, like a kid caught skipping class. "Bro," he started. "I thought you were just doing some plumbing stuff. Minor repairs. Didn't know you were building a whole movement." I met his gaze evenly. "I've always been more than what you think I am, Jared. Always." He nodded, eyes down. "Yeah, I see that now." Behind them, Lila hovered like a bystander, wringing her hands. "It's beautiful, Grayson. Really? I didn't know you had it in you." "That's funny," I said, not unkindly, because I never stopped having it in me. Camille reached for my hand then. Her fingers brushed mine, light and hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she had the right anymore. "I was wrong," she whispered. "About a lot." I looked at her. Not angry. Not bitter. Just tired. "Yeah," I said. "You were." I didn't take her hand. Not out of cruelty, but because I needed her to understand this wasn't about optics or forgiveness under pretty lights. It was about something deeper. Respect. And respect doesn't start when the cameras are rolling. It starts in the quiet. In the everyday. In the moments when no one's watching, but someone still chooses to believe in you. They hadn't. But the people in this room had. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough for now. The morning after the launch, I woke up to the smell of bacon. That stopped me cold. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Camille hadn't cooked breakfast in years. Not since the early days, back when she still laughed at my jokes and pulled me into the kitchen to taste whatever recipe she was experimenting with. Lately, it had been smoothies on the go and complaints about the smell of grease. But there it was, bacon. And something sweeter, maybe cinnamon? I came downstairs slowly, cautious, like the house might snap out of the illusion if I moved too fast. Camille was in the kitchen, hair pulled up in a soft bun, wearing one of my oversized t-shirts. There were eggs on the stove, pancakes stacked on a plate, fresh fruit in a bowl. I blinked, unsure what part of me felt more disoriented, the smell of the food or the look of hesitation on her face when she turned and saw me. "Morning," she said, voice careful. I nodded. "Morning." We stood there for a moment. No rush to fill the space with meaningless chatter. She set 2 plates on the table. We sat across from each other, a silent treaty resting between the syrup and the steam. "I've been unfair," she said finally. Her fork barely touched the food. "Last night, I saw you in a way I should have seen you all along." I kept my hands still. Let her talk. "I married you for your kindness, your drive. I knew you were a builder, Grayson, not just of homes, but of people. I used to be proud of that. But somewhere along the way, I started chasing this idea of more. Fancier. Flashier. I started thinking that your quiet strength wasn't enough." She looked up at me then, eyes wet, but clear. And I forgot that the most valuable things don't make noise. I didn't say anything yet. I didn't have to. She wasn't done. "I shouldn't have skipped your dinner. I shouldn't have rolled my eyes when you talked about plans. You've always supported me, paid for my dreams. Listened when no one else did. And when it was your turn to shine, I chose barbecue." She choked on a laugh then, bitter and broken. God, what kind of wife does that? I exhaled, slow and steady. My appetite hadn't arrived with the bacon. My stomach was still too full of everything left unsaid. I met her eyes. "You threw me away for a backyard party." "I know. I didn't ask for much," I said. "Just a few hours. A little space in your life where I didn't have to perform or beg for interest." Camille nodded, hands trembling around her coffee mug. "I was trying to prove something last night," I continued. "Not to strangers, not to investors, but to the people who always told me, without words, that I was just the guy with the ladder. I built something real, something lasting. And not a single one of you saw it until the lights were flashing and the applause was loud enough to drown out your assumptions." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Do you want me to leave?" The question sat there between us. Heavy. Loaded. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was the woman I married, still strong, still sharp, but cracked now. Exposed. And I didn't feel satisfaction in that. I didn't want her broken. I wanted her awake. "I want respect," I said. "Real respect. Not the kind that shows up when a reporter calls. Not the kind that's dressed in a red dress just because you realize I'm worth standing beside again. I want the kind of respect you give someone when no one else is watching." She nodded slowly. "And if I can't give you that?" I didn't hesitate. "Then you already left." The silence afterward was different. Not cold, but honest. Like we'd finally cut the rod out from under the beams and could see whether the structure was worth salvaging. She stood up quietly, wiped her cheeks, and started clearing plates. I didn't stop her. When she passed by me, she rested her hand on my shoulder. Just briefly, but it lingered with the weight of everything we didn't say. I stared at the empty chair across from me, the steam still curling from the untouched pancakes, and realized something. Respect isn't owed just because you share a roof or a bed. It's earned daily in the details and the silences where someone chooses to stand beside you or walk away. And for the first time in a long time, I was done making space for anyone who chose the door. The house was quiet now. Not in a peaceful way, but in that hollow kind of quiet you notice when someone's missing. Camille had moved out 2 weeks after the foundation launch, said she needed space to think. I didn't argue. She packed her things with a kind of sad reverence, like she'd suddenly realized she'd been walking through a museum of memories and hadn't looked closely at any of the exhibits. She left a note on the counter. "I don't want to lose you, but I have to figure out how to respect you without the spotlight telling me to." I read it once. Then I folded it and put it in the drawer beside our old wedding photo, neither discarded, neither forgotten. She moved in with her sister temporarily. Said it was just for now. I didn't ask for a deadline. Life didn't slow down. If anything, it hit the gas. My phone started ringing with numbers I didn't recognize. People from other cities, other states, asking how to start their own version of what we'd launched. Foundations, trade schools, job training centers. They'd seen the articles. They wanted blueprints, not just for buildings, but for belief. My parents called more often. My mom asked if she could help volunteer at the next foundation event. I told her yes, with one condition. "Show up for me," I said, "the way you show up for Jared." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Not defensive. Just realization. She agreed. Jared started texting regularly. Dumb things, mostly. Memes, jokes, random updates about his grill. But the tone had changed. No more one-upping. Just trying. And maybe that's what counted most now. At the ribbon cutting for our first training center, 3,000 square feet of tools, workbenches, classrooms, and open hope, I stood behind the podium and scanned the crowd. My apprentices were there, lined up in matching polos with the Trade Future Foundation logo on their sleeves. Some of them had their parents with them. Some stood alone, shoulders back, heads high. My parents came. They sat in the second row. My mom wore a button with my name on it. My dad brought a clipboard like he was going to take notes on how to be present. Jared showed up too, this time in a clean shirt. No barbecue sauce. Camille wasn't there. I told myself I didn't expect her to be. But it still landed heavy. Not in anger. Not even disappointment. Just wait. That night, I got a letter. An actual letter. No return address on the envelope, just my name in careful block letters. I opened it at the kitchen table, the one that still had 2 chairs even though only one had been used in weeks. Inside was a note from a teenage boy in Atlanta. His name was Damien. He'd seen a clip of my speech online and sent the letter through the foundation's website. They always told me I wasn't smart enough for college, he wrote. I thought maybe that meant I wasn't good enough for anything. But watching you speak, seeing how people clapped for a guy who builds with his hands, I don't know. It gave me something I didn't know I needed. A way forward. You make working with your hands look honorable. That line wrecked me. I sat there, shoulders heavy, hands trembling, and cried for the first time in a long time. Not because I was sad, not even because I was proud, but because for the first time in my life, I felt seen, not tolerated, not patronized, not acknowledged out of guilt or formality. Seen. It made all the years of invisibility worth something. Every rolled eye, every dismissive chuckle, every time someone called me just the gutter guy, all of it became scaffolding for this moment. A boy I'd never met felt less alone because I showed up for myself. And that mattered. I pinned Damien's letter to the corkboard above my desk. Right next to it, I tacked on a second note, this one from one of my apprentices, Maria. It simply said, "Thanks for giving me a second chance before I even asked for one." The board kept filling up after that. Letters, notes, messages, small but powerful reminders that what we were building wasn't just a foundation, it was a future. Even if some of the people closest to me had taken too long to recognize it, others were finding it exactly when they needed to. And for the first time, I realized something simple, something freeing. Respect doesn't have to start at home. Sometimes it starts where the broken things live. And that's always been my specialty. The second Trade Future Foundation event was smaller, more intimate, no press this time, no velvet ropes or city officials in tailored suits. Just a warehouse filled with promise, work tables arranged in neat rows, and the sharp, proud scent of sawdust in the air. It was the kind of space that didn't demand attention, but earned it. We were hosting a community outreach day. Families were invited. Kids too young for the program came to see what their big brothers or sisters were building. I watched a 10-year-old girl hold a power drill like it was a magic wand, her eyes wide with wonder. Her mom stood nearby, hand on her chest like she'd just witnessed a future crack open. And then I saw her, Camille. She was standing beside the welcome table, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, clipboard in hand. She was checking people in, smiling, giving directions, handing out flyers like she'd been doing it all her life. I froze for a second. We hadn't spoken since the ribbon cutting. No fights, no drama, just space. Clean and distant. I hadn't expected her to show up. I certainly hadn't expected her to volunteer. She looked different. Not in the obvious ways, but in the quiet ones. Calmer. More grounded. There was no designer handbag slung over her shoulder. No pointed stares or tight-lipped glances at her phone. Just a woman standing behind a folding table, asking the next guest if they had any dietary restrictions before handing them a name badge. I walked over, unsure what to say. She beat me to it. "Hi," she said, her voice soft. "Familiar." "Hi," I replied, glancing at the name tag pinned to her chest. It didn't say Camille Wells. Just Camille, outreach volunteer. She followed my eyes. Didn't want to assume the last name. I raised a brow. Fair enough. "I emailed the coordinator last week," she continued, glancing at the guest list. "Asked if you needed help. Didn't want to make a scene." "You didn't," I said. "You're doing great." She looked at me then, really looked. No pride. No pity. Just the kind of honesty that comes from stripping down everything and standing in what's left. "I've been thinking a lot," she said. "Not just about what I missed, but why I missed it. I nodded, hands resting in the pockets of my jeans. And I let the wrong things define you. I let the wrong people define me. We stood there for a moment, quiet in the noise of happy chatter and the whir of drills from the back room. I'm not asking to fix everything, she said. Not today. Maybe not ever. I just want to be part of what you're building, whatever way you'll let me. That landed harder than I expected. Because for years, I've been building with no one beside me, laying bricks for dreams no one believed in. And here she was, not trying to take credit, not trying to pose for a photo, just standing there with open hands, asking for a job. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Later that afternoon, I watched her kneel down to help a little boy glue wood pieces into a birdhouse. She wasn't dressed for photos. Her knees were probably going to stain, but she laughed, full and easy, and it reminded me of a version of her I hadn't seen in a long time, one that didn't need red dresses or stage lights to feel present. Rebuilding a marriage isn't like rebuilding a roof. There's no checklist, no final inspection, just effort, repeated, daily, quietly, but she showed up. That was a start. My family came to more events after that. Not all of them, not always on time, but they showed up differently. Jared stopped trying to outshine me and started asking how he could support. My dad helped lay down floor mats in the new training wing. My mom brought cookies for the apprentices every Saturday, even though no one asked her to. And me? I kept building. Not because I had to prove something anymore, but because it's who I am. I'm not just the gutter guy. I'm the one who shows up when something's falling apart. The one who figures out how to hold it together, even when it doesn't look like it can be saved. So when someone approached me at that event and said, "Hey, aren't you the guy whose birthday party went viral?" I just smiled. "Yeah," I said. They didn't come at first. I looked across the room at Camille, laughing with a teen apprentice, hair frizzing from the humidity, no makeup, no mask.